Yep, here you go. We're going to start with he's going to start with an opening statement before you get to questions.
Sounds good. We start recording right now.
Just you tell me when to go, Q.
You're all set. You're all set.
Okay. First off, I just want to thank Sean and his coaches, our players, and all our support staff. This was a unique year, as all you guys have covered and known, and we're still doing Zooms instead of in person. But all the COVID protocols that Nate Bresky and his staff went through to help us get through a safe season, a lot went into that. And then just our players, I know we came up short, but these guys were very selfless in staying out of restaurants and out of the public scene as much as possible to keep this building safe. And it takes a lot of people to make that happen, and I'm very appreciative of them. Obviously proud of their effort on the field, even though we came up short on Sunday night. And then, I thought Sean had his best year, and I think he's in the running, and he's got my vote for Coach of the Year for what that's worth. And the coordinators, Brian Dable, Leslie Frazier, Heath Farwell, and all the guys, I thought they all had a great year for us. And they're all, ready to already unpack what happened and get started, for 2021. And, so with that, I'll open to questions.
Hey, Brandon, it's John Scott. Thanks for taking the time here to do this.
You got it, John.
Obviously, this season was incredibly successful. How does what you accomplished this year change the bar of expectations for you and this team moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. We, back-to-back seasons of the playoffs, which is good. That's a start to, what I refer to as sustained success. And, we won the AFC East. So we'll obviously be the hunted team, in that division. And I think people will refer to us, this team played in the AFC Championship a year ago. So we're going to get people's best. We know that. And next year's a new year, though. Nothing we did will matter when we start this offseason or when we start camp. Every team's built up a new players. And so we'll have to hit the reset button. And we got a lot of work to do to try and get this thing going and build a team that can earn its way back to where we were and hopefully further.
And in regards to Josh, obviously he took a huge step, just like the team as a whole did. Where do you stand with you of potentially working a long-term extension with him this offseason?
Yeah, I don't get into contracts, John, but it's a fair question in the sense. Very proud of Josh. What I would say about him is, I know he's his own worst critic. And even though he had a great year, just like he did last year, he kind of led our exit meeting, and he went through what he's got to do, and he knows, and he's so driven. I got no doubt that once we got to get Josh to power down and just kind of reset, but he's going to come back, using Sean's words, humble and hungry, and but very proud of him. And I think he's shown people what he can do in this league. And I don't think he's reached his ceiling. I think there's still growth for him.
Appreciate it, Brandon. Thank you.
You got it.
Hey, Brandon, good to see you. Thanks for taking some time this morning. Appreciate it.
You got it. Good to see you, Heather.
Yeah. Going along, off of that with Josh, just, the other day he said, I think I proved that the Bills didn't make a mistake by drafting me. What are some of your biggest takeaways from the steps and the growth that he took this season? And what do you think he proved this year?
Yeah, I think, this year he really played well against various defenses. I think last year some of the press man on offense, and it wasn't just him, some of our receivers didn't necessarily get open. Maybe he didn't make the right reads. Maybe he felt the pressure. I thought, he really showed well against that. I thought he also, in most of the games, he had a couple of games where he didn't, but most of the games when teams didn't give him the deep ball, the home run ball that he does like to throw, he checked it down a lot and just took what they gave him and was willing to hit that 10, 11, 12 play drive, for points and just understanding what the defense has given us, how he's been played, and understanding the game. You go back to that New England game from a year ago when he had all those turnovers. I think one of the big things we talked to Josh about and that Josh learned was some games we don't need you to score 30. Some are going to be a defensive struggle, and we just want to possess the ball, play field position, let our defense get them backed up, get the ball in the plus 50, and then go get points. And I think he learned, it's just another phase of complementary football. But, he did a lot of great things this year, and we don't have the success we had, not only as an offense, but as a team without what number 17 did.
And, we heard a lot of players talk about how if we want to get to where we want to go, we've got to beat the Chiefs. Like, that's the standard. I think Trey said that the other day. How close do you think this team is to taking that next step and beating a team like Kansas City?
Yeah, I mean, they're the gold standard. This is 3 AFC championships. They've been in a row and now back-to-back Super Bowls. So I think they've shown sustained success, and the current gold standard of the AFC and maybe the league. We'll find out here next week when they play Tampa. But they are, they're the leader in the clubhouse. So you've got to catch them all if you want to get to the Super Bowl. But it'll first start, Heather, with winning the AFC East. We still have to go back to that. You got to win your division. That gives you the best chance. We want to host games here. So it's, I feel fortunate. We hosted 2 games. But now it's like, what we talked to the players, we want to host that last game, that AFC championship game here, in Orchard Park. And that would be another goal for us this year. But Kansas City is an excellent team. I thought they played a heck of a game the other night, and they were clearly better than us. So we definitely have work to do.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it. Enjoy your off season.
Thanks.
Hey, Brandon, Sal Capaccio, WGR Radio. Good to see you.
You too, Sal.
I want to ask you the same question I asked Sean yesterday on the heels of Tre'Davious saying he didn't even see his dad since the summer. John Feliciano tweeting he got up for the first time, didn't have a COVID test. Can you give us a little more insight into just how challenging the season was from that perspective for you and your staff to kind of manage everything on top of trying to build a contender?
Yeah, it was stressful in the sense of not only during the week, but as you get closer to game day, once we got into the season, and that happened to us. We had a couple of incidents on road games, and we're emptying the building out on days we're trying to leave, and we're doing contact tracing, and these guys are getting interviewed of, was your mask on? How long was the interaction? And some of these were taking 2 and 3+ hours. I know when we flew to Arizona the first time, that was when Josh Norman tested positive. We literally, I was out on a scouting trip, but I was on the phone with the league, and we had players at the airport ready to board the plane that we couldn't let them board until we got clearance for everyone. And I had to call players and Nate Bresky as well and say, you got to go home. Some of the close contacts, I think it was Levi Wallace, Dean Marlowe, and some guys. So Tyler Croft was in a car with him. And it was a learning experience all along. And again, as the stakes were raised, the stress level was raised. I mean, hopefully Josh Allen doesn't get it. Hopefully Steph did. I mean, any of these guys that really, that could impact what we do on offense or defense or whatever. And just you're praying to the good Lord that the guys can avoid it.
So with that said, obviously we're all hoping that things change this year, but we do know there's going to be differences in salary cap and all that kind of stuff, whatever direction they've given you with the league. I don't know. And obviously you don't want to get specific as far as contracts, and I'm sure names will come up here, but how much do you think this offseason is going to be way different than if we didn't have all this stuff? You know what I mean? If everything was on projection to be the actual salary cap and all that, how much have you had to kind of change your course and your thinking, knowing that all of these things are going to be different this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, that change kind of thinking started last year when we knew there was going to be no fans, and the league, they adjusted, or they said the cap floor will be 175. At that point, we've had to start operating. Now, it's one of those things you wish we knew that a year ago. Maybe we wouldn't have made every move we did. Maybe we wouldn't have been as aggressive in some areas. But I think most teams were planning on the cap to be around 210 to 215 from talking to some of my peers in the league and how we were viewing it. So now you're talking about, instead of it going from 198 to 210, now you're talking about it going back as far as possibly 175. So definitely a change in plans, and not a lot we could do in season. Our roster, we were still going to pick the best 53 and the best practice squad. But at this point, as we get clarity, and at this point we don't have anything other than the 175. There should be some things coming up in meetings with the league in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully that will give us, is it 175? Is it 180? What is it going to be? And that will tell us what decisions we have to make. There's probably going to be some tough decisions.
Well, thank you for your professionalism as always this year. And thank you to you and your wife, Haley, for all the pups and the animals and things like that. That was really nice of you guys.
Now you got it. We enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Hey, Brandon, Adam Beane.
Hey, Adam.
Yeah, hey, good to see you. Last year, we're all in the room in Orchard Park, right? And you stood on the podium. You made, a very clear statement about we need to score more. You went out and accomplished that this year. So as you reflect and you talk about hosting an AFC championship game next year, all of those goals, specifically in a football sense, what do you think needs to happen in order to realize those?
Yeah, those goals. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're not necessarily going to duplicate what we did on offense this year. I mean, scoring 500 plus points is hard to do. I don't think we can, say, because a lot went into that. We were pretty healthy. We lost John Brown, we lost some linemen, but overall, Josh was able to play every game. Cole until the end of the year. Steph, we had a lot of the main pieces in there, so that always factors. But you'd love to stay in the top, 5 of offense if possible, and then defensively we struggled the first half of the season, but I thought the second half we really started coming into our own, and it started reflecting what we've seen the years prior, under Leslie and obviously Sean's there as well. But we need to be strong there. Special teams, Heath Farwell's done a great job, in his second year. I thought he really moved the needle last year, and this year was even better. So we got to stay strong there and maybe come out of the gates a little stronger on defense if possible.
Are there steps you have to take specific to, obviously your goal is to win the division and all those things, but to get over the top against Kansas City, what do you think you need?
Yeah, I mean, we got to continue. We're going to have to draft well. That's the first off, because what I was talking about with Sal here a minute ago was the salary cap. And this is not going to be a free agency that we can be as aggressive. We've been aggressive with that because we build up the resources, and you can only have so many drafts. At the end of the day, we still want to draft, develop, and sign our own. And we're getting to that point where now we don't have to go out and add pieces from free agency. We got to see how many of the guys that we can retain. We'll fill in here and there some holes, but I would not anticipate any blockbuster moves of, Steph Diggs type or some of the moves we made the year before in free agency. It's really going to be plugging some holes depending on who we lose. And then the onus is on us to really have a strong draft.
All right, last thing from me. You mentioned Steph Diggs, and I wanted to ask you about that. So much has been made. You made the move, obviously. The results speak for themselves. How do you reflect on that trade and its impact on the team this year?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a win-win. I thought, first off, I thought Minnesota did a nice job of filling that void that they lost with Steph. And I thought Steph came in here, and, I give him credit. He sat down with me and Sean. Obviously, it took forever to get him in here because of the pandemic. But when camp started, was the first face-to-face we had with him, and he had already had that Florida trip with the quarterbacks. But he came in, and he and I and Sean sat down for a good half hour, and we talked about what went well in Minnesota, what didn't go well, things that he learned and things that we can learn about him. And he owned up. He didn't come in here pointing fingers. It was all them. And he came in here and we said, you're going to have a fresh start. This is what we expect. And man, he was just golden. He from start to finish. And he gelled with the guys. He wanted to be one of the guys. He didn't try to be something different. And he's a magnetic personality. His work ethic on the field, he raised definitely the level of practice, especially you guys with practice. You see those one-on-ones between him and Trey White and some of the other guys. I mean, those guys were competing hard, and that's what makes you good. And we'll take as many Steph Diggs as we can get on this team.
Right. Brandon, thank you. Appreciate the year.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Brandon.
Vic, how you doing, buddy?
All right, man. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it. And of course, your cooperation all year, and congrats again on Executive of the Year. And And now that you have that award, of course, all eyes are on what the executive of the year is going to do to show that he's the reigning king there.
You're making me blush. Stop.
So, but here's the deal. Philosophically, 15-win season coming off of that. And then 2 years ago, it was 6 wins. What's the mindset of approaching the offseason, knowing that you've got a team that was that good versus, more work that you had to do with 6 wins, but you still, as you said, have to draft well, what is the sort of this finely tuned mentality? Because last I checked, when you win that many games, you don't have ideal draft positioning. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I still think we have to be very honest with where we're at. We're still not a Super Bowl team. And, there's one team happy, Vic, at the end of the year. And although we made a great, step last year in 19 from 18 and another step this year, we still have to go further. The goal here is to win that thing. And until we get in that game to compete for it, we can't win it. And so it wasn't good enough this year. And so we've got to be very honest with what did we do well and where are there some holes? And that's at the end of the day. And then how do we fix that? Is there anything personnel wise we can do? Probably so. And is there anything schematic? Do we need to adjust some things? Do we need to do this, whether it's the protection or the run game or the pass rush or cover skill? You just have to be very honest where there's certain defenses that gave our offense trouble, where there's certain offenses that gave our defense trouble. Did we struggle more against the run than we did the pass? You know what I mean? We got to be real honest. We got to open it up. And that's why we're going to try and debrief here for the week and then take a step back. Sometimes it's too close. It's too fresh right now. And then we'll continue to look at it as the weeks and months come and be honest through this whole spring before these players get back.
And I know it's more complicated than this, of course, but referencing the gold standard of the Chiefs, one of their inherent qualities besides incredible talent is incredible speed. Does their speed, which looked to be so much greater than your ability to counter it, factor into the general thinking of what you have to do this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, you always want to add speed, talent. Now, speed alone won't do it. There's fast guys. We see them every year in the combine. Some of them get overdrafted. They still need to be good football players. They need to be smart and all that. But, yeah, I mean, it's hard to close the gap on a guy like Tyreek Hill. I mean, they just that guy is a unicorn. And so I can't tell you that I can find a DB that can run as fast as him. So that's where some things scheme will come in play as well. You're not always going to have a guy that matches up against, using their team, for example, that matches up against Travis Kelce and a guy that matches up against Tyreek Hill and that matches up against Cole Hardman. I mean, it's just, they got a lot of weapons. They've done a really good job of building that thing. They had put a lot of pieces in place, and then you drop a guy like Patrick Mahomes in there well into Coach Reed's, whatever that was, 4th, 5th year of being in Kansas City, and they sit him for a whole year behind Alex Smith. They really did a great job of putting this thing together, and they've even added a couple of pieces since Mahomes. But, we're in year, finishing up year 4 here. I don't know what year they're in, 7, 8, 9, but they've really built a great program and something that, teams like us would want to model.
The last thing you said, the league is saying that there's different protocols for scouting. Senior Bowl coming up this week. What can you walk through what the protocol of the Bills is regarding how you're going to scout in this virtual setting or not, or how you're handling that with travel and start with the Senior Bowl? Good.
Yeah. So the way the Senior Bowl worked, Vic, was we were allowed 10 representatives. So since we played so long in this game and a lot to, in the postseason, myself, Joe, Dan, and some guys didn't go, but our full college staff is down there. Brian Gaines down there with them as well. And so they're able to watch practice. They're having to test daily, just like we did in season. So obviously if anyone tests positive, they have to leave. But they're down there for the whole week, just like normal, watching practice, and we'll have 1 or 2 guys stay for the game. And then, but we'll still continue to meet with these guys, our scouts coming up here in February. And then there's no combine, as you guys, I think, have heard or read. So what it's looking like is we'll have to spread out on pro days, and that'll be our one time to see these guys move around again, or weigh or do the bench or any of those of the so-called underwear Olympics that'll be coming up. But everything with the player will have to be virtual. There's no in-person workouts. The only in-person thing you can see is if you go to their pro day and they're working them out. So a lot of it's going to go back to the tape of the fall if they played. Obviously, some guys didn't play. They opted out, and we'll have to look at the previous year's film. So right now, there's probably more guys on most teams' draft boards just because there's still a date of March 1st that some seniors can go back and if they want to, they have that option to have another year due to the COVID-free year. So it's fluid as we go along, but at least we did a lot of things virtually last year close to the draft. So our scouts are kind of used to it, and we'll manage. You got it, Vic. Good seeing you, buddy.
Brandon, John Worrell, how you doing?
Hey, John. Good to see you, buddy.
Good seeing you. I'm going to try to keep it quick into 2 questions, lots of hands up, but I'm paraphrasing you from last year, but you said a team's deficiencies in the season, you're usually exposed come the playoffs and in the playoffs loss, which is where you arrived to get to the need to score points. What did you see from the defense, perhaps from the early part of the season, maybe catching up to it in that loss to Kansas City? And what priorities, are there something that you can emphasize as opposed to scoring points this time around going into this offseason that you need to that you would like to focus on?
Yeah, you're spot on, John. Your last game, if you make the playoffs, barring something crazy happening with some wild turnovers or something, generally will tell you where you're short, if you don't win at all. And I think, maybe a little bit more balance of the run game. And I'm not talking, when I say balance, I'm not saying run it 20 times, throw it 20 times. I'm just saying the ability to run it when you have to. Maybe they've got great pass rushers, a team you're playing, and you want to slow them down. So you run it or you screen them or whatever. So just some things like that will help our offense. And because you're not always going to be able to, track meet everybody up and down the field. Weather can play an element, even heading to that Baltimore game, the weather was looking a little bit iffy. Obviously, it was still the wind. But if you add snow, rain to that, it would not be conducive to passing. So we've got to make sure that we can handle any of the elements if we want to host games, here in January. And then, defense, we had a lot of changes on the D-line last year, including the coaching staff, with Eric Washington and Jock Cesare. And I thought they did a really good job of figuring out this group and getting them going. It was a slow start, but I thought the second half of the year, they really started affecting the quarterback and affecting the whole defensive to a positive nature. But, our run defense wasn't always the greatest. I think we lost a little bit of beef inside. We lost Jordan to free agency. But when that happened, we're thinking Starr's coming back. And then Starr opted out. And I think we all saw, I know he's not a 10-sack guy and things like that, but what he provides, not only the run game, but just the ability for our linebackers to roam free, I think took those guys a little time. So again, those are the things that we got to look at affecting the quarterback, how we do that, whether it's the pass defense or the pass rush. Those are things that we probably didn't do enough the other night against Mahomes.
And my last thing is on the run game. A lot of people are just blaming Devin Singletary or the loss of Zach Moss. How do you look at that whole picture, including the offensive line, when it comes to needing to make some improvements there and knowing that you might be a little handcuffed when it comes to this offseason, as you mentioned?
Yeah, I think it's unfair to look at the running backs to point blame on the running game. I think running the football is very complex, and it's obviously the O-line, it's the tight ends, it's the receivers. And if one guy doesn't make his block, the play's probably dead. And so there were times this year where we're one guy away, and whether it's a tight end, whether it's a lineman, and it's a big gainer, and you're going, gosh, if we just get this guy blocked, and we had that at times. And I'm not saying there's no blame. Sometimes the running back missed the hole, but it's one of those things you got to practice it, you got to emphasize it, and you got to work on it, and that's something that we'll definitely look at. But I'm not looking at Devin Singletary and Zach Moss thinking those guys came up short for us.
Thanks so much, Brandon. Have a good offseason.
Thanks, John.
Hey, Brandon, how are you?
What's up, Matt?
Not much. Right or wrong, a successful season, and there's so much to celebrate, but fans will start kind of nitpicking at things, and some of the stuff that I've seen out there is like some frustration or panic a little bit with Ed Oliver and Tremaine Edmonds. I wonder what your perspective is on where those two are at going into off-season 2 and off-season 3 for Tremaine, and how high expectations are still for both of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, those are young players, and start with Ed. Ed's playing really well, and for people, if people want to just look at sack numbers, he doesn't have those, but he impacts the game, not only the pass game but the run game, and he's growing, he's learning. But at the end of the day, the sacks will come, I think, as he continues to learn the game and learning how people are playing him and blocking him. Ed faces a lot of doubles too, so it's not the easiest road for him. But I thought he definitely took a step up from year 1 to year 2. He might have started slow this year, but I thought, 3/4 of the year he played really well and helped our defense. And Tremaine, I think Tremaine's, in fairness to him, I think when he banged his shoulder up that first game, he got back out there. I think it took him a while. I think it was his first injury to play with. I think he struggled with it, but I thought he played, overall solid down the stretch. Are there more plays out there? That probably so. But he makes the Pro Bowl. I think that's legit. I think he's respected by his peers. I think sometimes in your own fan base or your own house, sometimes you can be more critical of your own than seeing how they compare across the league. But Tremaine's 22 years old. He's a young player. We still have a lot of confidence in him and where he'll grow into.
And, obviously the offseason is going to play out the way that it is. But I'm wondering, as you've had a chance to look back on the season, and there was some continuity built on the interior of the offensive line throughout the second half of the season into the playoffs. How did the bookends really got a lot of the headlines, and deservedly so? They played really well. How did you feel like Mitch Morse leading the way, that interior played between the three of them?
I thought Mitch played really well down the stretch. And his communication was really good with the guys, from my understanding. That's an important piece. Obviously, you got to have the athletic ability and the physical skill set to play center, but you're not seeing errant snaps. You look at the Baltimore game, they had some errant snaps. Like, that was a very windy game. I thought Mitch played well. We didn't use Mitch as much. Mitch is more of an athletic center than a power center. In years past or last season, we probably used him on the pin and pull plays a little bit more than we did this year. Just every year's kind of a new year, and you kind of get in a groove of what's working, what's not. But Mitch is never going to be a guy that's going to mow, a nose tackle 3 yards down the field. But at the end of the day, I thought he played well overall this season, and especially the second half of the season, I thought he did. And then, did you mention another name? I can't remember.
Yeah, just a little bit Ike Bucker, just because, Wyatt Teller had such a great season, and obviously you can never tell the future with that. But you got a young player like Ike Bucker who is going to face some challenges, next season with the competition that you guys always provide.
Yeah, I mean, Ike did a really good job. I thought he came in there, and the previous season he played in that last game against the Jets at center. And it was probably an unfair thing. Ike's not a natural center, but we like guys with versatility, and he'll do anything. If you told Ike to go play tight end, he'd do it, and he wouldn't flinch. And so he probably didn't play his best game against the Jets that week at center. There was some snaps and some other things. But this year we tried to say, let's just focus in on guard more than anything. Obviously emergency center. But I thought once he got in a groove, he played better and better. And I thought he and Dion meshed well, with the games that they can go on. And I thought he provided comfort to Mitch as well, just helping settle things down with the calls up front. So for a young player to get thrown in late in the year like that with limited experience, I was very pleased.
Thanks, Brandon.
You got it, Matt.
Hey, Brandon, Sal Majorano over in Rochester.
How you doing, Sal?
I am good. About 8 things I would have asked you have already been asked, but I guess I can ask you this. Defensive line was one area you really made a lot of changes between last year and this year. Could you kind of give us a general overview of how you thought those guys did as a group? And then second part, specifically break out Epinesa and what you saw in him.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, Sal, I don't think as a group they were in sync early. I think no preseason probably didn't help that group with all the changes, including both coaches there. And but I thought Eric did a great job of, and Leslie Frazier too, of figuring out what these guys do well. We were a little smaller up front this year, as I said earlier, just the way it worked out. And so figuring out who could anchor in there, who can provide pass rush. You know, we don't want to get run on all day, but we also got to get some guys in there to affect the quarterback. I thought the second half of the year, those guys played really well. And that's, you know, how we use this defense. We feel like it starts up front, and we've got to be good there before we can worry about the back end. At the end of the day, we were probably still a little light, you know, for my comfort level. And I think we really had to focus on stopping that run, and maybe that affected some other areas, whether it was getting to the passer or just defending the pass in the back end. And then AJ, you know, I thought AJ came in. So AJ played at a much heavier weight at Iowa. And we asked him to get his body weight down, make it a better body comp, you know, from a fat percentage. And he really, not only did he get it down, he went way down. And he came in probably a little too lighter than we wanted, but that showed how hard he had worked this offseason. And I think he came in and started a little slow, and we were a little worried how he was going to hold up against the run early on. He added a little bit, but then he couldn't move the needle. But I thought he played well. He improved his pass rush. You know, he made some play. He would have had a sack. You know, if one of the other guys had stayed in their rush lane the other night, he'd have had a sack against Mahomes, or at least an opportunity at it. You know, I'm very pleased with how he played the second half of the year. Again, started slow. Coaches wanted to earn that trust from him, having some veterans in Jerry and Mario and Trent and those guys. But I think he's got a high ceiling, and it'll be a big offseason for him.
Okay. Thanks, Brandon. Fairways and greens, pal.
Soon enough.
Thad, you can go ahead.
Sorry about that. Brandon, you were the assistant GM in Carolina, 2015 or so. And let me turn myself on so you're not looking at nothing here. And coming off a Super Bowl season, and you had a big-time defensive free agent, Josh Norman, who you guys let get away. I know it's not the same situation, but similar deal this year, good year, and you've got a big-time defensive free agent, Matt Milano. Do you learn anything? Can you learn anything from what happened that offseason in Carolina that you can apply this year going forward with Milano and this team?
Yeah, I mean, they are two good defensive players that you always want to keep as many as you can. That was a unique situation with Josh, without getting into specifics of what happened there. I don't think Matt's is the same situation, but you definitely want to keep. It was never the goal in Carolina to say, "Hey, let's let Josh Norman walk." There were some things, you know, just get in the way of business. But no, I mean, Matt is a very good player. What a great job he's done since he came in here to improve from 2017 to now. You know, his biggest thing is being able to play 16 games. You know, that'd be the first thing he'll tell you. It's just he had some nicks here and there, and so it's finding that balance. But you know, we'd love to be able to get Matt back. He knows that. I've shared that with him. I'm sure Sean has as well. The business side matters. You know, he wants to, and he's earned the right to go to free agency and see what his market bears. But you know, we'll do our best to retain him and as many guys as we can. We just, again, I don't even know the numbers yet and what it's going to be. But there's going to be some tough decisions, unfortunately, for us, whether it's letting guys go on this roster or having to watch guys leave.
Sean talked yesterday about the disease of me and worrying about that with this team going forward. Is there a such thing as the disease of I'm executive of a year and therefore everything I touch is going to turn to gold, and you got to kind of, you know, maybe humble yourself a little bit too?
But please, no, I hope not. I got plenty of people to humble me. My kids do it better than anybody, though. I can promise you that. But, you know, that whole award, that's a team award to a lot of people. And obviously Joe Shane, Dan Morgan, and all of our scouts, and then just the whole front office and Sean and his staff too. Results on the field lead to that. You know, I know they put my name on it, but I don't look at it that way at all.
Cool, Brandon. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Hey, Brandon, Josh Reed here. How are you?
What's up, Josh?
Not much. You know, you just mentioned a little bit there, the staffs, whether it's the coaching staff or your staff. Any update on Leslie Frazier? I know he's one of the guys in the running for maybe the Houston Texans job. And do you feel like you dodged a little bit of a bullet because obviously people were after Brian Dable and, you know, guys off of your staff?
Yeah, I mean, it's a catch-22. You want guys to have opportunities. That means we're having success. That's the way the industry works. Selfishly, you want them to stay, but you always, if it's the right opportunity for them, you want to high five them and say, "Great job, man! You just hit a career goal." Whether it's a GM or a head coach or whatever. So we're happy to have any of these guys back that you know, that didn't land one of those jobs. And Leslie's situation. Again, would be very happy for him. He's so deserving of this opportunity. No news, haven't heard anything from Houston where that stands at this point. So we're kind of in a wait and see approach.
Gabriel Davis, finally for me. Gabriel Davis seemed to have a really good rookie year. I'm assuming you don't think he's close to his ceiling yet. At some point, do you think he is a top 2 receiver on the team?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put that on him, but I think at the end of the day, I don't think Gabe is near his ceiling. I thought really the second half of the year he had played so much for, especially when Smoke went down, that I didn't even think of him as a rookie by the time we got to December. I mean, it's just he's so smart. And if Diggs went out of the game, even if Cole went out of the game, they could put him in there and play a different version of a bigger slot. He knows all the spots, and I think that's only going to help him going forward. You know, he'll have to continue to work on some things as a young player, but he made some big time catches. I think he had like 3 or 4 touchdowns called back on illegal formations, just plays that should have been touchdowns, didn't impact the game. He'd have had about 10 or 11, but really solid rookie year, especially for a guy who had no offseason with us, who had to come in. First time we saw him, you know, was August basically.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate your time. Have a good offseason.
Thanks. You too, Josh.
Hey, Brandon, you've touched on a few of the rookies here, but could you evaluate the class as a whole and maybe how going through the draft during a pandemic and meetings virtually can help you this season, not really knowing how the draft or other things will unfold with no scouting combine?
Yeah, I mean, it was my first draft in my socks. So hopefully I won't have to do that again. But if I do, we'll do it in my socks again. But no, you know, obviously we had traded the 1 for Diggs. So that was kind of our first rounder. But AJ, I talked about him a little earlier, you know, started slow. We'll get his weight and strength right next year. I think he'll start even faster and kind of where he left off. And then, you know, I thought Moss did a really good job and showed he could run physical. That Pittsburgh game, you know, I think we ran out 7+ minutes on the clock, and he had some big, strong runs for us, made some good catches out of the backfield for us. And, you know, him and Devin was kind of the hot hand at times who went, but we felt either one of those guys could start for us and play most of the game. It was next Gabe. I just talked about him. Really, really good rookie year. Jake Fromm had the most unnormal year a player could ever have to come in here and be the COVID quarantine quarterback. And I thought he handled it greatly. In his exit meeting, you know, we just praised him for staying true. I mean, he would literally be back there hearing the call on his helmet, and while Josh or Barkley are going back, he's going back just like he's making the throw from 20 yards back. I mean, just and then he stays after and throws with the practice squad. A really tough year for him, but I thought he handled it greatly, and I think it'll help him coming into next offseason. He'll be excited to be able to sit in the quarterback room within 6 feet, or, you know, or 6 or 7 feet of the other guys. But and then Tyler Bass, you know, I know people were down on Tyler early and probably questioning the decision to pick him over a veteran. But, you know, part of what we saw in Tyler, not only when he got here, but, you know, in college, was just nothing was too big for this kid. And he is not afraid of the big moment and never made an excuse. And, you know, a lot of times I've been around kickers. A lot of times kickers will make excuses of, oh, the wind, the ball, didn't get my footing right. Any miss he had, he took it right on him. And I thought that was a great quality, one that I haven't seen in many kickers. And he made some big time kicks, and I was happy for him the other night to hit a couple 50-some yarders in that pressure situation. So he was a great weapon on kickoff, whether we hung him up or whether we wanted to just kick it out of the end zone and not let him return. And then Dane came in and played well for us. And if we had more opportunities to get him up with the roster maneuver to be able to take a practice squad up, we used his up pretty quick. And we even had him as an emergency guy in the playoffs a couple of times. He really showed it wasn't too big for him, and he'll have every opportunity next year to not only win a spot, but we'll see, who starts opposite Trey.
And then lastly for me, since you've come to Buffalo, have you seen the game evolve at all? And how have you had to draft and sign guys in free agency to follow along with how the NFL is continuing to evolve every 4 to 6 years, and maybe even going forward this year, how you may have to evolve a little bit?
Yeah, we're having to evolve dealing with a pandemic. Scouting in a pandemic is totally different. We've had to learn different ways to, get in the backgrounds of these guys. We're going to be Zooming a lot of these players again this offseason instead of flying to their campus or flying them in here. But as the game, it's always evolving. And to your point, whether it's needing to add speed, whether it's needing to add linemen with more athletic ability or more power, there's so many different things. Part of what you're always looking at, Matt, is you first look in your division and how you stack up to those guys. And are there things that one of those opponents does to you that is really problematic, and how are you going to defend that? And again, that'll always be, as long as we're here, we have to see how we compare against those 3 teams, because if you can't get out of your division, it doesn't matter about the Chiefs or any other team. And then you're definitely going to look at what the Chiefs do well and what we do well. What are our strengths versus them? And then where do they have us, and try and balance that out a little bit to match some of their strengths, so that it's still a strength, but maybe the gap instead of here is here, and we can win in some other areas of the game.
Thanks, Brandon. Enjoy the off season with your family.
Thanks, Maddie. Good seeing you.
Hey, Brandon, how you doing today?
What's up? Who do I got?
It's Bove. How are you?
Can't see. There you are. What's up, Matt?
Going on? Oh, nothing much. Hey, you gave out 2 big extensions right before the season with Deion Dawkins and with Tre'Davious White, and both really had strong years. Does that give you peace of mind, knowing that there are going to be some more big extensions kind of internally that you guys probably want to hand out in the near future?
Yeah, that goes back to what, we wanted. Those guys were drafted here and develop and still developing, and re-sign them at the right time. So hopefully now that we're into that mode, we'll continue to be able to do that. That's the model, the best model for success, because those are homegrown and they know what to expect, and they can help lead the message. And that's what Deion does, not only in the offensive line room, but on the offensive side, and Trey on the defensive side. And the guys coming up this year, whether it's Josh or whoever else, in that class that we have the ability to extend. Obviously the cap will affect who all will have that opportunity to do. And again, we're excited that we have some guys that we can extend. Now it'll just be who all is that, and how do we fit it in this giant puzzle?
I know you would say that every position, could make improvements, could be better, but I just wanted to get your general thoughts on the tight end position. What did you see from that group this year?
Yeah, I thought it was up and down. To be honest with you, we started out with Croft and Dawson, and I think Dawson had a concussion and maybe a calf or something. Then he got COVID. He had a very inconsistent start to the year. Tyler made the big catch against the Rams and made a couple touchdown catches for us. We just never really got that position. At the end of the year, I thought we did a little bit. Dawson kind of started getting his groove, but it was never where I felt the opposing defense was like, man, we've got to stop their tight ends from going off. And so we'll look to that group. Lee Smith obviously brought a lot, a wide tight end blocker for us, and some physicality and leadership is just off the charts. But at the end of the day, we'd love to have a guy like we just faced in Kansas City, They don't come very often, but that's what you want, you know, and we got some guys here we want to continue to develop and see what happens. And obviously if there's ways to add competition, whether it's free agency or the draft, you know, we would do that as well.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate your time.
You got it, Matt.
Hi, Brandon. Mark Gaughan here. A couple scouting questions. One, during the season, your scouts went to college games just like they normally would, but for the most part, they didn't spend time during the week on campus. Correct? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct, Mark.
Okay. And then, so really you're behind, every team is way behind in that regard, and the scouting process. And then going forward, the pro days will be regular pro days. So the pro days, there's no substitute for the combine. The pro days are just the pro days. And how will the medical work? How's that going to work?
Yeah, a couple of things before it remind me on the medical, but I don't know that we're necessarily behind. I think we got a late start, but we got to a lot of games, and even Joe Shane, myself, Dan Morgan got out to some games too, and worked our way back into the testing program here to get out. But our scouts made a lot of games, and so instead of more times on campus watching practices, we had to make sure they got to more games. And instead of being on campus to physically talk to the strength coach or the trainer or a coach, they had to use either FaceTime on their phone, or they were able to Zoom into the schools like this and get a lot of that information. So it was a later start because the college seasons got pushed back in some areas. So we didn't, you know, we had to back up when all their reports were due. And, you know, but I think at the end of the day, as we sit here now as Senior Bowl week, I think we're in a similar position that we've been in the past. But to your point, the combine will kind of set us back and slow us down of getting medical information and just seeing these guys. You know, we're able to interview 60 players there. We're going to be behind with that. So I think we're caught up today, but I think we're going to get behind again, and we'll have to catch up later February through March into April with a lot more Zooms like this. The medical part of it, I think, is still being ironed out. There's various things being talked about, whether it's some of them, you know, being divided up and clubs doing them with their own doctors and sharing them with other teams, depending on their areas. There's also some being talked about of having some regional areas where guys would fly to maybe 2 or 3 spots, and there would be doctors there to get images, share it with the whole league. I think that's still being worked through. Hopefully by early April, we're able to still get all the medical stuff that was normally done at the combine.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Brandon Beane, the most valuable executive, Mookie Hawkins, First and 80. How's it going?
Hey, good, Mookie. Good to see you, buddy.
I know it's been a long time, man, since you know, me and you had the chance to chop it up a little bit. But great season. But how due to COVID, how do you evaluate the running backs and this D line with dealing with lack of continuity? And will 6 draft picks be enough to make an impact on next season's roster?
Yeah, I think we have more than 6 though. I think we don't have our 4th, but we have an extra 5th, and then we have Carolina's 7th. So we should have 7 as it stands right now. But yeah, well, it'll be important for us to hit on those, and the onus is going to be big on the draft, because I'm sure the cap's not going to be where I want it or any other GM. So we'll have to make the most of it, but it's fair. But you know, again, I'm very happy with the years that Devin and Zach had. I don't think I'm not putting blame on those guys or anything. I think just as an offense, we never got in sync running, and I think there's blame all around. And D-line wise, like I said, I thought those guys played well overall down the stretch. We just, the last game as a defense, not just them, we just didn't affect the quarterback enough, whether it was getting him off his spot or getting him down. And we got to look at that and be honest with ourselves.
Hey, man, it's been an absolute pleasure to watch you just make sure that this team was competitive on all cylinders, man. Good luck this offseason.
Appreciate you. Good seeing you again.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Brandon, it's Jay with the Buffalo News. How you doing?
Good, Jay.
Hey, so you you did well with John Feliciano and Darrell Williams finding meaningful starters, contributors at reasonable salaries. But now that both of those guys are up, do you worry that maybe they've priced themselves out of this market a little bit? And just how do you evaluate their individual seasons?
Yeah, I mean, I thought starting with John, he had the unfortunate setback. He had his shoulder fixed, and then he was getting ready to come back, and he had no spring, and then gets in the weight room and does his pec. But I thought he came back really fast, which was a testament to him. That thing could last another 3 or 4 weeks, according to the doctors. So kudos to him and our medical staff getting him back. And I thought he got his groove. He had to play some center too because Mitch went out, and we were out a game and a half. I think without Mitch, but John's a great communicator. He stepped right in. That's what you love, his versatility, his toughness. I thought overall he did some good things. Was he perfect? No, but none of our guys were. And I thought Darrell, when we signed Darrell, obviously I was very familiar. We drafted him in Carolina and who he was. He's a very steady Eddie personality. And I thought he brought a calmness to our O-line. Quite honestly, when we signed him, I thought his best shot might be at guard than tackle. But once John went down, we decided, to give Cody a shot there and start him at right tackle. And we were going to flip him around, but the more we were watching him practice, he just seemed really confident over there at right tackle. And his 2017 year, he was a second team All-Pro at right tackle. So I knew he could do it. He had just had that bad knee injury, which had set him back a little bit. So it was good to see him back to playing like he did probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I thought he was steady all season long and was a nice piece for us. Whether we can get him back, I don't know. We'll have to see where their markets are and things like that. But if not, we'll have to try and find some similar replacements, at a cost-effective number.
Yeah. And then 2 other guys, Matt Barkley, I know, you didn't have to use him a lot, which you quite frankly hope for at that position because it means Josh is staying healthy and playing well. But I know he brings a lot to your roster, just in terms of his relationship with Josh, that kind of thing. So where do you stand with him? And then also John Brown, he's 30, I think maybe 31 now. Injuries this year a little bit. He had kind of a weird year where some games targeted a lot, then other games really not a lot of production. Just how do you evaluate John's season and Matt's season?
Yeah, you're spot on with Matt. I mean, what a selfless guy. And just he's, some guys are the backup and they're itching to play. Matt's a competitor. He wants to play, but his first thing every day he walks in his door is to help Josh Allen be the best version of himself. And that's why it's been so great to have him. Again, without getting the contracts, we'll see. But very appreciative of Matt and even his wife, Brittany, does a great job with helping wives connect. And it's big for our team culture. And so the Barkleys have been a big blessing to the Buffalo Bills. And, we'll see the business side where that ends up. But John Brown. So John, what a year he had last year. And then this year we thought adding Diggs was really going to even help him more. And I think he started off fast, and especially that Miami game. But then he obviously had the injuries, and I just felt like he never got in a groove. Once he got hurt, he missed some games, the Tennessee and Kansas City maybe. And we never seemed to get back in sync with him. And I don't think it's anything with him. He worked hard to come back. He's a great, great young man. So we'll see where that goes. But I don't think it was on him. I just think he missed so much time. Gabe started playing. Diggs, it's hard. You kind of get in a rhythm of those guys, and then just dropping them back in, 4 or 5 weeks later. I just felt like we never got in sync with all of them back out there. But we'll figure that out this offseason.
Thanks, Brandon. Enjoy the offseason, man.
Thanks, Jay.
Hi, Brandon. Matt Fairburn here.
What's up, Matt?
Nothing much. I'm curious how you and Sean navigated what I imagine were kind of tough conversations, tough decisions this year in regards to thinking specifically about guys like Trent, Harrison Phillips, who are healthy scratches at times, and guys you've invested in, whether it's draft picks or salary cap space. Even Mitch Morse had a game where he was healthy but didn't play. How did you guys navigate those conversations as they get tougher when you're in this stage of a rebuild?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, but I think you have to be honest and open. And whether it's, hey, I think we need to give this guy behind you a shot to see what he can do. We feel like you maybe there's, he could give us more right now for whatever reason, whether it's the limited reps in another game or whether it's practice. Harrison's case, he was coming off the ACL. We just didn't feel like he still needed some more time, and he didn't want it, but just, sometimes you got to look out for them. And, in Trent's case, there was some young guys there that, and special teams plays into it as well. Daryl is a big factor for Heath in that group. And, we focus probably more than some teams on special teams here. So that factored, as well. Trent's probably, still had more to give as a DN, but Daryl was growing and we wanted him to get those reps. But just being able to play on fourth down, for what 92 would do, helped us. And then who was Mitch? Yeah, Mitch, he had the concussion. We know he's had his past. And so we got that run game going, that Patriot game, when he went out. And it was just like, you know what, man, we ran the ball so well. Let's just, let's let Mitch make sure he's good. And it really wasn't anything on his play or anything like that. It was just the hot hand type of thing. But I think you have to be very honest with guys, and they're not always going to like it and they're not going to agree with it. But I think if you ask those guys, I think they'll at least respect it.
And I know a lot of attention will get paid to, the free agents you have coming up this year. Micah Hyde's entering the final year of his deal next year. Just curious how much you think he has left in the tank as he enters his 30s.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see any drop off from Micah this year. So I can't say I think he's declining or anything like that. I'm a big fan of Micah Hyde and just what he brings not only on the field, but, in our building. You guys feel, one of the most positive personalities to be around, and just a super competitive guy. You wouldn't feel that on him when you're just talking to him in an interview. He probably doesn't feel competitive in a one-on-one conversation, but when he's on that field, he's one of the most competitive guys, and that's what you love about him. I think he still definitely will play for years in this league if he wants to.
Thanks, Brandon. Have a good offseason.
Thanks, Matt.
Hey, Brandon, it's Marcel. How you doing, man?
What's up, Marcel?
Hanging in there. I know you've been asked a lot about Kansas City, so I'm sorry for bringing it back up, but just wanted to get this kind of specific question out the way. How much of this offseason is going to be focused on, I guess, matching Kansas City or building your roster to beat specifically Kansas City versus keeping the identity that you have tried to build here over the past few years? Like, how much does that identity try to change now that I think you've got a new kind of adversary to tackle?
Yeah, I still think it goes back. We got to win our division. So we can't all of a sudden put our eyes on Kansas City and forget about New England, Miami, and the Jets. And so it always starts there. But yeah, we're definitely going to look at this game and this team and what are the things that they do well and how do we overcome it? And we're not going to change our identity. It's just trying to add and make some things on our side that maybe they're not overly weak, but we can make them stronger. And if there's some areas that are really weak, we definitely have to make a move to make them stronger so that we're ready should we get that opportunity to play them, not only in the regular season, we play Kansas City, but, in the postseason, if we're lucky enough to make it. But again, we do need to worry about Kansas City. I think everybody in the AFC is definitely watching them, but you still have to win the division. We got to win the AFC East first.
Makes sense. And you mentioned that you had this kind of sinking feeling after the Houston game last year. Do you get a similar feeling after Sunday's loss? Or do you have a similar feeling after Sunday's loss, or how is it? What is going through your mind, on that flight home and in the day since?
Yeah, it's very painful, and it's the further you go, probably the more it hurts, because you're that close. You're walking into that game knowing you're 60 minutes away from an opportunity to win it all. And that's the ultimate goal. And so when you're right there on the doorstep and you don't do it, in our locker room, there's a lot of tears. And I can't say that I wasn't feeling it as well. And it just, you feel bad. You feel bad for those players. You feel bad for our coaches. You feel bad for our organization, our fan base, and so appreciative. You know, when I walked out there to watch warmups the other night, and there was a lot of Bills Mafia in the stands, and I was like, man, this is really, really cool. What an opportunity for our players to play. Although it's an opposing stadium, there's a lot of Bills fans there, and so I'm glad you brought that up because gives me a chance to thank Bills Mafia for. I know they had to watch from the sideline most of the year, but those 2 home games, what they provided for our team was just amazing. I heard it from a lot of people, and then again to go on the road, they always show up on the road, but I was like, there's a limited number of tickets. How many are they really going to be able to get? They did well for themselves. They got more than I thought. So thank you to Bills Mafia. Not only in Buffalo but all over the country.
Thank you, Brandon. Have a good offseason, man.
Thanks, buddy. All right, one more, guys.
Oh, hey, Brandon, Mike, Catalano and Rochester. Just real quick, the position that we don't see a lot of change in volatility is quarterback. But around the league, it's setting up that we could see that even in your own division. Have you ever seen anything like it? And how nice is it to not be part of that this offseason?
Yeah, good question, Mike. It has been interesting to see some of the turmoil, around the league at that position. And guys may be moving. We'll see. But hopefully they're not moving to our division, the ones that we think are really good. But at the end of the day, we won't be able to control that. And to your point, excited at what we have in number 17 and where that's going, and really appreciative of how hard he's worked since we selected him, back in 2018, and just looking forward to what he's going to do this offseason and what he's going to look like in 2021.
Great. Thanks very much.
Joe B has a question.
Okay. Joe B's got one. Okay. Thanks,
All right.
Mike.
Hey, Brandon, thank you for the marathon session here.
Got it, buddy.
I was curious how you broke down what Cody Ford was able to do this year, and after 2 years now, seeing it both at guard and tackle, do you believe he is a starter for you guys moving forward, and why or why not?
Yeah, I mean, Cody, unfortunately, the injury got him. He had his shoulder fixed. He's played probably as many games hurt as he has healthy, in fairness to him, and he doesn't say a word. And you got to shut him down. We could have shut him down a year ago with the shoulder injury that he had, but he refused. He played harnessed, and I think that's one of the things that gets lost when the so-called evaluators out there are evaluating these guys. Not everyone has all the details of what they're dealing with, even if it's listed as shoulder or knee or whatever. Cody played a good portion of his rookie year with a shoulder that needed a 6-month recovery, from operation. And then this year, he's already had 2 surgeries since he was injured, and we had to put him on IR. So he's a young player still. I think he showed some, that he can handle either guard. We had to move him into both spots when John went down. We like his versatility, Joe. We like it that he can play guard or tackle, so I'm not going to slot him in as a guard only or a tackle only. But I would be surprised if he's not a starter of our front 5 next year. I'm not saying he is. He's got to come back and show he's healthy and earn it. But talent-wise, yeah, he's probably one of our best 5.
All right, last one. Is the franchise tag a consideration for Matt Milano?
Anything is. We want to keep good players. But Joe, it'll come back to that cap and what we can afford. And if it's 175, we're right at it right now. So definitely some tough moves to make. But we want to keep good players. Matt's a good player. So we'd love to keep him here. But again, he's earned this right, and we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.